the beginning, there was nothing. Then God said, "Let there be light." Or was it a singularity? A point of energy so infinitely dense that it explodes into the universe. Hey, welcome to the series. So we're calling this The Bible Read by an Atheist, and to start we're doing creation. Obviously, trying to get an understanding of what the science tells us and what the Bible tells us. So let's start with the Old Testament. On the first day, God said, "Let there be light," as well as God separated the light from the darkness. On the second, God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And God called this expanse heaven. On the third day, God said, "Let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let dry land appear." And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters seas. Then God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation." On the fourth day, God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and they shall serve as signs, and for seasons, and for days and years." God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. On the fifth day, God said, "Let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens." And on the sixth day, God made the animals of the earth according to their own kind, the livestock according to their own kind, and everything that crawls on the ground according to their own kind. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the livestock, and over all the earth." And on the seventh day, God rested. Now, let's take a look at what modern science has to tell us about the same events. Void. Then 13.8 billion years ago, it happened. The event we all know, the Big Bang. As we see through modern research, we see that the universe was a hot pot of sorts, full of electrons and quarks and other particles. And over a period shorter than the blink of a human eye, the universe cools. Quarks clump into protons and neutrons. The universe would remain an opaque, superheated fog, expanding and gradually cooling over the course of roughly 300,000 years until the universe was cool enough for electrons to combine with protons and neutrons. The first atoms were formed, and finally, light can shine. But the first star wouldn't shine for another 300 million years. Before that, small density fluctuations in the distribution of matter begin to grow due to gravitational attraction, leading to the formation of the first nebulae. Under the overwhelming gravity, these clouds of gas collapse, leading to the ignition of nuclear fusion reactions between hydrogen atoms, creating the first stars. These early stars were short-lived, supermassive stars, about 100 times the size of the Sun. These larger stars would burn out quickly and explode into massive supernovae. Their ashes, or stardust, would go on to form later iterations of stars and even the first galaxies. The universe would repeat this process for roughly 8.5 billion years until enough debris from early generations of stars and galaxies began to coalesce into our solar system roughly 4.5 billion years ago. But not as we know it. At this time, the universe was a messy, dangerous place, full of debris, protoplanets like ours, and other massive celestial objects all crashing into one another. It wouldn't be for another 20 million years until our proto-Earth, would be struck by a Mars-sized protoplanet named Theia. And then the moon forms over the course of roughly a few million years. After this impact, and a slurry of other impacts as well as other high-energy events, the Earth was covered in magma. But outgassing from crustal rocks gives the Earth an oxygen-poor atmosphere made up of gases such as methane, nitrogen, hydrogen, and ammonia, as well as others. Over time, Earth's crust cools, allowing for the formation of oceans. And roughly 300 million years later, and following further impacts and further cooling, the development of cyanobacteria using photosynthesis led to the oxidization of the atmosphere, and over the next 3 billion years, these cyanobacteria would evolve into all sorts of different aquatic organisms. Somewhere between 510 and 630 million years ago, the first land plants emerged within green algae. And around the same time, the first fish began swimming in the oceans. And over the next 200 million years, those fish would evolve into hundreds of different species, even beginning the journey to land. Tetrapods. In ancient Greek, 4 foot. The first amphibians. And for 250 million years, evolution does its work. And now the Earth is home to thousands of different creatures, bugs, birds, even mammals. And with 150 million more years, after trial and error, time and again, the first human. Okay, so now that we have an understanding on both sides, let's compare. And the first day, rather obviously, we're talking let there be light and the Big Bang, right? But maybe not, because there was no light after the Big Bang. We needed stars first, and that took hundreds of millions of years. That being said, the first star does still fit. Now, the second part, something to separate the light from the darkness. At first, it's like, okay, yeah, light is a separate state from darkness. That makes sense. But also maybe dark matter. This scaffolding in the universe, keeping things structured and separate. I don't know. Maybe just a theory. Who knows? On the second day, we see something about the expanse in the midst of the waters, separating the waters from the waters. Now, at first, I immediately think dark energy, right? The repulsive force that's expanding our universe at an accelerating rate. But this could very well just be space, right? We've called space the heavens for millennia. And that would line up when God calls it the heavens. That would also give a little context to us saying, yeah, they're looking down on you from heaven. Like, yeah, down from where? Space? Okay, that makes sense. Now, onto the third day, let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place and let dry land appear. Now we're talking Earth. But the second part there is let there be vegetation. Maybe proto-Earth, back before the moon. You know, we were getting slammed by a bunch of debris. I mean, we know that there's a possibility that organic life is being carried on comets and other asteroids. You know, there's a possibility there. But who knows? I mean, maybe even proto-Earth carried life before it got smashed by the moon. Who knows? Could be. Now, on the fourth day, God made 2 great lights, right? The greater light to govern the day, the lesser light to govern the night. Obviously, we're talking sun and moon. The sun was already around before the Earth, so that doesn't necessarily line up. But the second light, the moon, there's that impact, right? And over 20 million years, the moon forms, and guess what? We use it to tell time. Crazy, right? And in terms of the whole creating the stars thing, like stars are currently being made as we speak. That still fits the bill. And day 5, let the waters teem with swarms of creatures and let birds fly above the earth and the heavens. And yeah, after that impact, it took roughly 100 million years for the Earth to even cool down to the point where there were liquid oceans. And, well, depending on the evidence, it was another 600 million to another billion years from the formation of the moon till we had our first organisms. Still kind of fits, and those early organisms adapted photosynthesis, which gave us an ozone. Shortly thereafter, we have plants. Shortly thereafter, we have birds, bugs, animals, all sorts of shit. So that does make sense, but in terms of the context, I don't know. I mean, there was a giant dragonfly named Meganura. Does that count? Now, onto the last day, we have animals, livestock, bugs, and us created in God's image. And, well, obviously that's just evolution. But when it comes to us being created in God's image, if the argument is that God is the universe, then you look at a picture of the universe and a map of neurons, like, they look the same. There we go, right? So there we go. Obviously this isn't a one-to-one or a complete recount of everything that happened, I should say I am definitely stretching things to fit a narrative, obviously, but you can't deny that the things written in Genesis kind of do line up with what we know now, and that's pretty interesting. But things only get more interesting as we go on. The descendants of Adams and those crazy long lifetimes, like, they kind of make sense in some weird ways. So check out the next episode as well.